Oscar Wilde was born on the 16th October 1854 in Dublin, Ireland. His parents were well known and attracted a degree of gossip for their extravagant lifestyles. In 1964, his father was knighted for his services to medicine. However, his pride in receiving this honor was overshadowed by an allegation of rape by one of his patients. Although never proved, it cast a shadow over William Wilde. Oscar Wilde proved to be a student of great talent. He was awarded a scholarship to Trinity College, Dublin. Here, he studied the classics, in particular, developing an interest in the Greek philosophers and the Hellenistic view of life. From Trinity College, he won a scholarship to Magdalen College, Oxford University. He enjoyed his time in Oxford and was able to develop his poetic sensibilities and love of literature. He also became more conscious of his bisexual nature. For his increasing feminine dress, he often received stick from more traditional Oxford students. He was a brilliant scholar, but also increasingly rebellious. In one academic year, he got rusticated for turning up to college 3 weeks after the start of term. Thus, after a while, he lost interest in pursuing an academic career in Oxford and moved to London. It was in London that he was able to skillfully enter into high society, soon becoming well known as a playwright and noted wit. Oscar Wilde became famous through London society. He was one of the early celebrities, and in some respects, he was famous for being famous. His dress was a target of satire in the cartoons, but Wilde didn't seem to mind. In fact, he learned the art of self-publicity and seemed to revel in it, at least up until his trial in 1898. Oscar Wilde's trial gripped the nation, the subject matter a source of intense gossip and speculation. For his crime of homosexual acts, Wilde was subject to 2 years hard labor. It is no understatement to say this experience deeply shocked and affected the previously ebullient Wilde. In some respects, he never really recovered on his release. He left for Paris, where he lived in a comparative anonymity. However, he retained his wit and continued to write. The novel begins on a beautiful summer day with Lord Henry Wotton, a strongly opinionated man, observing the artist Basil Hallward painting the portrait of a young man named Dorian Gray, who is Basil's ultimate muse. After hearing Lord Henry's view, Dorian begins to think beauty is the all-important aspect of life. He discovers the amazing actress Sybil Vane, who performs Shakespeare plays in a dingy theatre. Dorian approaches her and soon proposes marriage. But her protective brother James tells her that if Prince Charming harms her, he will certainly kill him. Dorian invites Basil and Lord Harry to see Sybil perform in Romeo and Juliet. Sybil, whose only knowledge of love was that of the theatre, cast aside her acting abilities through the experience of true love with Dorian. Disheartened, Dorian rejects her, saying her beauty was in her acting, and he is no longer interested in her. When he returns home, he notices that his portrait has changed. Dorian realizes his wish has come true. The portrait now bears a subtle sneer and will age with each sin he commits, while his own appearance remains unchanged. He decides to reconcile with Sybil, but Lord Harry, after informs him that she has killed herself in a lake. When Dorian returns to London after many years, he sees James, who wants to kill him. Dorian fools James into thinking he is too young to have been involved with Sybil 18 years earlier. James releases Dorian, but he is approached by a woman who chastises him for not killing Dorian, revealing Dorian has not the age of 18 years. James attempts to run after him, only to find Dorian long gone. While at dinner, Dorian sees James stalking the grounds and fears for his life. After that, he realizes that the motives behind his self-sacrifice were vanity, curiosity, and the quest for new emotional experiences. Deciding that only full compassion will absolve him, he decides to destroy the last vestige of his conscience, and in a rage, he picks up the knife that killed Basil Hallward and plunges it into the painting. His servants wake hearing a cry from inside the locked room, and passers-by on the street fetch the police. The servants find Dorian's body stabbed in the heart and suddenly aged and horrible. It is only through the rings on his hand that the corpse can be identified. Besides him, however, the portrait has reverted into its original form. In his aunt's London home, Basil meets Dorian Gray. Dorian is a beautiful young man who immediately captures Basil's artistic imagination. Dorian sits for several portraits, but Basil often depicts him as an ancient Greek hero or a mythological figure. When the novel opens, the artist is completing his first portrait of Dorian, but he admits to his friends Lord Henry that the painting disappoints him because it reveals too much of his feeling for his subject. Dorian arrives at the studio, and Basil reluctantly introduced him to Lord Henry, who he fears will have a damaging influence on the impressionable young Dorian. Basil's fears are well founded. Before the end of their first conversation, Lord Henry upset Dorian with a speech about the transient nature of beauty and youth. Worried that these, his most impressive characteristics, are fading day by day, Dorian curses his portrait, which he believes will one day remind him of the beauty he will have lost. In a fit of distress, he pledges his soul if only the painting could bear a burden of age and infamy, allowing him to stay forever young. After Dorian's outburst, Lord Henry reaffirms his desire to own the portrait. However, Basil insists the portrait belongs to Dorian. Over the next few weeks, Lord Henry's influence over Dorian grows stronger. He falls in love with Sybil Vane, a young actress who performs in a theatre in London's slums. She, in turn, refers to him as Prince Charming and refuses to need the warnings of her brother, James Van, that Dorian is no good for her. Overcome by her emotion for Dorian, Sybil decides that she can no longer act. Dorian breaks his engagement with her. The following afternoon, however, Lord Henry brings news that Sybil has killed herself. At Lord Henry's urging, Dorian decides to consider her death a sort of artistic triumph. She personified tragedy, and to put the matter behind him. Meanwhile, Dorian hides his portrait in a remote upper room of his house, where no one can watch his transformations. He lives a life devoted to garnering new experiences and sensations, who no regard for conventional standards of morality or the consequences of his actions. After 18 years, Basil Hallward arrives at Dorian's home to confront him about the rumors of the plague his reputation. The two argue, and Dorian eventually offers Basil a look at his soul. He shows Basil the new hideous portrait, and Hallward, horrified, begs him to repent. Dorian claims it's too late for penance and kills Basil. In a fury, Dorian picks up the knife he used to stab Basil Hallward and attempts to destroy the painting. There is a crash, and his servants enter to find the portrait, unarmed, showing Dorian Gray as a beautiful young man. On the floor lies the body of their master, an old man horribly wrinkled and disfigured, with a knife plunged into his heart.